Hollywood royalty, Oscar winner, icon of elegance. But what if everything you thought you knew about Anjelica Huston's charmed life was a carefully constructed illusion? At 74, she's pulling back the curtain on a story so heartbreaking, it'll change how you see her forever. What does it cost to be a legend? For Anjelica Huston, the price tag included betrayal by the people who should have protected her most, relationships that nearly destroyed her, and a medical revelation that crushed her deepest dream. And then there's the feud nobody saw coming, a quiet, years-long tension with none other than Oprah Winfrey that began with a single night at the Oscars. Today we're diving into the real story behind one of Hollywood's most fascinating figures. From a childhood scarred by abandonment to her battles with some of the industry's biggest names, this is the truth Anjelica Huston kept hidden for decades. Stay with me, because what she reveals about her life will absolutely shock you. July 8, 1951. While most fathers pace hospital corridors waiting for their child to be born, legendary director John Huston was halfway across the world in Uganda, completely absorbed in his latest film project. When word finally reached him days later that he had a daughter, his response was nothing. No rush home, no celebration, just cold, calculated indifference. And here's the devastating part. That wasn't unusual. It was just the beginning. Anjelica's mother, the brilliant ballerina Enrica Soma, soon discovered something that would shatter her world. Not only had John refused to cast her in Moulin Rouge, but he'd also started an affair with the actress he chose instead. Imagine that betrayal. Your husband not only denies you professionally, but also replaces you romantically with your would-be role. It set a pattern of infidelity and emotional chaos that would define Anjelica's entire childhood. By 1960, Enrica had moved Anjelica and her brother Tony from Ireland to London, desperately trying to create some stability. But the damage was already done. John continued his endless string of romances, while Enrica herself became involved with a married man and eventually gave birth to another daughter, Allegra, in 1964. Now, Anjelica absolutely adored her little sister. That bond would become one of the few pure relationships in her turbulent life. But even that connection would be tested in ways she never imagined. You're a teenager and Hollywood comes calling. A new adaptation of Romeo and Juliet is being cast at your school, and they're looking for their Juliet. For most young girls with acting dreams, this would be the opportunity of a lifetime. But when Anjelica showed interest, her father stepped in with an ultimatum that would haunt her for years. "If you're gonna act," he declared, "it'll be in my films." So in 1969, John cast his own daughter in A Walk with Love and Death. Sounds like a father supporting his child's dreams, right? Wrong. Working under his direction was emotionally brutal, and when critics saw the film, they eviscerated her performance. The experience was so traumatic that Anjelica spent the next several years drifting, skipping classes, chasing distractions, completely lost. And her mother? Enrica was too consumed by the wreckage of her own life to provide the guidance Anjelica desperately needed. Then came the night that changed everything. Anjelica was jolted awake by a family friend delivering news that felt impossible to process. Her mother had died in a car accident in France. She was only 39 years old. At just 18, Anjelica had lost the one person who'd shown her unconditional love. That void would lead her directly into the arms of someone dangerous. Grief does strange things to us. For Anjelica, it pushed her to New York, where a Harper's Bazaar photo shoot connected her with Bob Richardson, a brilliant photographer with a dark, volatile edge. He was 42, she was barely 18. He promised devotion, escape, and a future together, and she, raw with loss and desperate for someone to fill the emptiness her mother left behind, believed him. What she didn't know was that Bob had been institutionalized, battled severe addiction, and left behind a marriage that collapsed under the weight of his chaos. At first, his intensity felt like safety, but slowly, terrifyingly, devotion revealed itself as control. The warning signs escalated quickly. After Anjelica left briefly for a TV appearance, she returned to find Bob had destroyed everything she owned in their hotel room, all because she hadn't unpacked her suitcases fast enough. Can you imagine that level of rage over something so trivial? But the breaking point came during a trip to Mexico with her father and his new fiancée, Cece. One evening, Anjelica shared a simple drink with her father. When she returned to Bob, he exploded. He hurled a bottle directly at her head. The message was crystal clear. This man would hurt her. When they returned to Los Angeles, Anjelica finally found the strength to end it. 3 years of fear finally over. She retreated to Cece's home in the Pacific Palisades, healing among horses and open air, avoiding people entirely. Until an invitation arrived for a party hosted by a rising star named Jack Nicholson.
Still emotionally scarred, Anjelica went to that party. And just like that, she was pulled into another complicated relationship, this time with one of Hollywood's brightest stars. Their careers were both taking off, forcing them into a brief, long-distance situation while she worked in London. But here's where it gets painful. Just days after Anjelica left, a friend confessed she'd slept with Jack within hours of Anjelica's departure. Jack talked his way out of it. He was good at that. But trust? That never fully returned. And it shouldn't have, because from that point on, Jack didn't even try to hide his affairs. Anjelica knew. She endured it anyway, caught in a cycle she couldn't break. Through it all, she felt the pull to act again, but fear held her back. She refused to rely on her father's legacy or Jack's fame to get roles. She wanted to earn it herself. By 1976, Anjelica hit her breaking point with Jack. While he jetted off to New York with friends, she attended a party in Los Angeles where she met Ryan O'Neal, magnetic, troubled, and restless. The attraction was immediate and confusing. When Jack returned home, Anjelica delivered a confession that shocked them both. She thought she was in love with Ryan, and she was leaving. Around the same time, she auditioned for The Last Tycoon, only to face another crushing blow. Director Elia Kazan looked her in the eye and told her she wasn't beautiful enough for the role she wanted. He offered her a humiliating consolation prize instead. She accepted, stepping into an ensemble cast that included, awkwardly, Jack Nicholson. Her life became a blur as she found herself entangled with both men simultaneously. But what followed with Ryan was a nightmare. Anjelica later described it as living with 2 people in one body. Moments of charm would shatter into sudden, terrifying violence. One night at a party, Ryan struck her simply because he couldn't find her. She fled upstairs and locked herself in a bathroom, but he followed, continuing the assault. With no one to turn to, she sought advice from the most unexpected person, her 13-year-old half-sister, Allegra, who gave her the simplest, most devastating truth: leave. Disillusioned after The Last Tycoon, Anjelica stepped away from film for 5 years. When director Bob Richardson offered her a role in The Postman Always Rings Twice opposite Nicholson and Jessica Lange, she accepted, part opportunity, part unresolved attachment. But before filming could truly begin, a violent car accident threw her through the windshield. She required facial surgery, and the physical pain was immense. Yet the realization that followed hurt even more. She'd spent too much of her life waiting for love, waiting for approval, waiting for someone else to validate her existence. Approaching 30, Anjelica made a decision. She wanted something that belonged solely to her. She studied, she took small roles, she survived without leaning on famous names. Then came Prizzy's honor. A complicated proposal. Jack as her co-star, her father as director. She resisted, then relented, only to be insulted during salary negotiations. They told her she had no real talent and was only there because of who surrounded her. Once, those words would have destroyed her. This time, they ignited something powerful. Anjelica Huston didn't retreat, she stayed, and she proved definitively that she belonged. Prizzy's Honor received 8 Academy Award nominations. Only one turned into a win, and it belonged to Anjelica Huston. When her name was called, the moment felt surreal. She didn't head toward the press, she ran straight back to her father, tears streaming down his face as she threw her arms around him, thanking him not as a director, but as a parent. For the first time, her success was entirely her own. But here's what most people don't know about that Oscar win. It created a rift she never anticipated. That same year, Oprah Winfrey delivered a performance in The Color Purple that many believed was Oscar-worthy. She was nominated in the same category as Anjelica. When Anjelica's name was called instead, the room erupted in applause. But according to Anjelica, no one person ever congratulated her, never reached out, never acknowledged the win. Oprah. Anjelica has suggested that from that night forward, Oprah kept her at arm's length, cold, distant, unforgiving about the loss. Whether this tension was real or perceived, the silence became another reminder that even triumph comes with unseen consequences. Think about that. Two incredibly talented women, both deserving of recognition, and instead of celebrating each other, there's distance. Hollywood can be brutal that way. In the years following her Oscar win, John Huston poured what little strength he had left into The Dead, determined to make it a family legacy. Anjelica's brother Tony had written the script, and despite John's fragile health, oxygen tanks never far from reach, the family bent every rule to bring the film to life. Watching her father direct while visibly fading took a devastating toll on Anjelica. She became physically exhausted and seriously ill. Shortly after filming wrapped, John's condition worsened. Anjelica visited him daily in the hospital, clinging to routine and hope. One night she said goodbye, promising to return the next day. He passed away before she could. He was 81. Though their early years had been marked by distance and pain, he'd become a constant presence later in her life. Losing him felt destabilizing in ways she hadn't expected.
As the decade closed, Anjelica's relationship with Jack Nicholson quietly dissolved, ending for good by 1990. Seeking space, she traveled to Cannes as a festival juror, where she met sculptor Robert Graham through a friend's introduction. With Robert by her side, Anjelica finally stepped into genuine happiness. Love felt steady for the first time in her life, and almost simultaneously, her career reached a turning point she'd dreamed of since childhood. Producers offered her the role of Morticia Addams. Growing up, Anjelica had devoured the Addams Family cartoons, secretly fantasizing about playing Morticia one day. The dream, however, came at a brutal physical cost. Her corsets were cinched so tightly she couldn't sit in a car. Her makeup required fabric tabs glued to her face and taped behind her head, pulling her skin taut and leaving her with constant headaches and rashes. It was punishing, exhausting work, but it paid off spectacularly. The Addams Family became a massive hit, and Anjelica's performance became permanently etched into pop culture. Away from the spotlight, love deepened. During a trip to Ireland to visit her childhood home, Robert surprised her with a proposal. They married in 1992, and for the first time, Anjelica believed she'd found something lasting. Yet beneath the joy lingered an unspoken absence that would quietly break her heart. Motherhood had never been a focus during her chaotic earlier relationships. They were too unstable, too destructive. But after leaving Jack Nicholson behind, she finally confronted the question she'd long avoided. Could she become a mother? Doctors gave her the answer she'd feared: endometriosis. Becoming a mother was highly unlikely. The diagnosis stirred feelings of anger and inadequacy. After marrying Robert, they pursued fertility treatments with hope and patience, but the outcome never changed. It was a private grief she carried while continuing to move forward publicly. Freed from her father's shadow and Jack's fame, the 1990s became a period of remarkable growth. Anjelica worked steadily across film and television, even stepping behind the camera as a director. Without trying, she'd become the effortless A-lister she'd grown up around.
Her role in the Royal Tenenbaums brought critical acclaim, but the experience was far from pleasant. Behind the scenes, the atmosphere was tense. Anjelica later spoke about veteran actor Gene Hackman's hostile behavior, particularly toward young director Wes Anderson. Things grew so uncomfortable that she and Bill Murray often intervened, with Murray even showing up on his days off to shield Anderson. You'd think that would forge a lasting bond between Anjelica and Bill Murray. It didn't. When they reunited on The Life Aquatic, the warmth was gone. Murray was distant, even dismissive, famously excluding her from a cast dinner early in production. It was a painful reminder that in Hollywood, alliances are often temporary. In 2007, Anjelica believed she'd finally reached her fairy tale ending with Robert Graham. Their marriage offered peace she'd rarely known. Then tragedy struck again. Robert became seriously ill, and just 6 months later, he was gone. The loss shattered Anjelica. She never sought another romantic relationship, choosing instead to live with the love she'd already known. Healing came through work and reflection. She poured herself into projects like the TV series Smash, and later into writing 2 deeply personal memoirs, stories that traced not only her life with Robert, but the emotional fractures of her upbringing. Although time eventually eased her relationship with her father, one childhood wound took years to forgive. John Huston's affairs were no secret, but one crossed a line so devastating that it nearly destroyed their relationship permanently. He began a relationship with Anjelica's teenage friend, Zoe Salas, and he revealed the truth in the cruelest way possible, by announcing the birth of a son. That child, Danny Huston, would later become a cherished part of the family, but acceptance didn't come quickly. For Anjelica, forgiveness was a long, painful journey, one shaped by love, betrayal, and hard-earned grace. At 74, Anjelica Huston has lived a life that reads like a Hollywood screenplay, except no screenwriter would dare make it this painful. From a father who chose films over family, to relationships that nearly destroyed her, to professional battles with icons like Oprah and Bill Murray, to the medical diagnosis that ended her dream of motherhood, she's endured more than most could imagine. Yet she's still here, still working, still creating, still honest about the cost of everything she's achieved. What strikes me most about Anjelica's story isn't just the pain, it's the resilience. She could have given up 1,000 times. She could have let the betrayals define her. Instead, she kept going, kept creating, kept fighting for a space that was truly hers. Her story reminds us that behind every icon is a human being, flawed, hurting, trying their best to navigate a world that often seems designed to break them. If Anjelica's journey resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more untold stories from Hollywood's most fascinating figures. Drop a comment below and let me know, what part of Anjelica's story surprised you most? Was it the Oprah tension, the devastating relationships, or something else entirely? And if you want to dive deeper into Hollywood's hidden histories, check out the video we've got lined up next. I promise it'll blow your mind just as much as this one did. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.